Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode. I'm Sneha Vishwalingam, and today we have with us Maaret. Maaret is joining us from Finland, and Maaret is an amazing tester, programmer, feedback fairy, and Maaret is also a speaker and an international author. Maaret has actually won the two biggest awards in the field of testing, and we are going to be talking to Maaret about all of this and so much more. Welcome to our episode, Maaret. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Maaret, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I started as a tester about 25 years ago. I didn't really intend to become a tester. I kind of fell into that. Someone realized that I had studied the Greek language and that I could basically operate a computer because I was studying computer science. And putting those two together, they invited me to test Greek Office, Microsoft Office back then. And I really fell into testing. It's kind of like falling in love, and I haven't gotten out ever since. And I love every single day of it. I work at Vaisala, as my title nowadays is Principal Test Engineer, which basically means that I do hands-on work as a tester, but at the same time I have a project level responsibility, and then I have an organizational level responsibility of taking the whole organization's testing forward. So that's about me.
Thank you, Maaret. Thank you for that. So, Merit, I'd like to hear a little bit about, what is your passion? What keeps you going on a day-to-day basis? You do so many things. You mentor people, you write blogs, you have a full-time job, you organize conferences, and you're so active in the community. What is your passion, and what keeps you going on a day-to-day basis to do so many things?
I don't even notice I do so many things. I just do, one small thing at a time. Like this call right now, it's not a big thing to show up for a call like this. But when you end up doing one of these every single month, over a few years, you've had really many of these. So that's kind of how all of the things start. So you don't need to really have that energy and passion on all of the things you do. You just choose what little things you do. And when you keep doing many little things of the same kind over time, that kind of keeps you going. And I think if there's a passion behind the things that I do, it's about learning. I really believe in this idea that my purpose as a human, as a person, is to better myself every day, not just in my tech skills, but also the way I am as a human, what I would like to be, understanding my own values and all that sort of things. So learning about those things and paying attention to how I feel with particular, I call them experiments, trying things in a particular way, helps me kind of make changes, the little changes that I need so that I can again, find the motivation of going forward. And I don't have a big kind of a overarching perspective. It is really about the little things, and in a continuous stream, it just comes to a lot.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you've spoken in about like 25 countries so far, Maaret. Can you share a little bit about your speaking experience, your journey as a speaker and a keynote speaker? I've witnessed you speaking at the Selenium conference, and people were just so moved by your talk, and you have that influence over people. So how do you do that? And can you share a little bit about your experience as a speaker so far?
I wish I knew how I do that, but I really don't know how I do it. What I know is that, well, like you said, I've had a chance, an opportunity to speak at 25 different countries, and I just calculated, I tallied my talks, 423 talks so
Wow.
far. So again, like, we talked about those little streams. You do one by one, and then you end up kind of getting that rehearsal. That's how I do that. But what got me started originally was back in, I think, around 2000 something. There was a job that I really wanted at the university. And they refused that job from me because I almost fainted on stage when I needed to introduce myself to about 60 people.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't a public performer in any way. I absolutely hated it. And I had physical reactions to having to even, do a simple thing like introducing myself. And I decided that there's no way I'm going to let this kind of a thing become a problem for me. for a longer period of time. So the next job that I then sought, like I decided that the next thing I will try is finding a job that allows me to rehearse. And that's what I did. I took a job at the university as a teacher, and I was teaching testing and doing research on testing. And I remember being terrified every single time I had to go on that stage. But at least I was talking about something that was, really close to my heart, and I wanted to spend time on.
That's beautiful. So you practiced and practiced and kind of made
I
it your
practiced and
strength.
practiced, and at some point it started to become a thing where like it changed from being like this thing that prevented me from getting what I wanted. It moved into this idea of this is how I get to meet people. This is how I learn when they agree or disagree with me, and I have yet to find a better way of learning. Well, I actually have one way of really good optional way of learning with people, which is pair and ensemble programming and ensemble testing. But this whole kind of like, getting on that stage and having people come to you and speak to you about, the common passion, the thing that we both love and care for, it gave me a chance of learning with the people about the things that I would otherwise have no access to. So for me, getting on that stage, it's more like an invitation to come and talk to me. I don't think of myself really as an introvert. I think of myself as socially awkward extrovert. And I have a really difficult time going to people who haven't first indicated to me that they want to talk with me. Like I shy away, I'm in the corner, I'm watching everyone and I'm watching everything. I love talking to people, but I don't do that unless they first kind of give me this little indication that something that I have in my head is of interest to them. So speaking helped me also overcome that kind of a social awkwardness that I've been experiencing.
Okay. I think in a way I'm like that as well. And I do agree that speaking is kind of helping me get over that a little bit. So I can totally understand what you're saying. When you were saying, I'm like, oh my God, this is the same thing that's happening to me right now.
But there is a difference now that I have been doing this so long. It changes over time. So in the beginning, I remember like every single talk that I did, there was at least a few people who came and talked to me. And now the people, when they come and talk to me, they first say like, I'm sorry, you must be busy. You are, you're so famous and things like this. And I'm like, I don't think of myself as famous and I don't think I'm busy. I'm actually alone here in this conference and I have no one to talk to. So I'm really happy that you came and talked to me. But there, the bigger stages, the bigger reputation, it has led to this idea around me in people that I'm somehow too important to talk to them. And they are the only reason I am there. So I wish that would go away and start being again a way of connecting with people.
I hope that happens because I never experienced that around you. You were just so nice to talk to. And I remember we even went around like to explore Bangalore when we went to the Suriname conference. It was amazing. You're a great company. So I hope people don't think like that. I hope people just come and talk to you when they meet you at conferences next time. So moving on to the next topic, Maaret, you are very passionate about mentoring people, right? You are a big part of the Tech Voices community. So I'd like to hear a little bit more from you on that. Why does this mission, why is it so close to your heart, and what do you feel about that?
Like I told you earlier here today, that my starting of speaking wasn't that easy. I felt like I needed to make it a little easier for others. Also around conferences, some of the challenges that I faced were around finances. I'm very big on the idea of not having to pay to speak, basically because my experiences were that I had to make choices between speaking at a conference and family commitments financially that I think no one should have to make. And Tech Voices and helping people and helping them understand all these dynamics that go around speaking, it got very close to my heart, of course, because of the experiences that I have, the missing support that I had, but also with the idea that, again, since I wanted to learn with people, and the fame took the connections away from me, mentoring kind of brought those connections back. So now the people with the best content in the world, they ping me to ask for help. And again, I get to learn all the things they know, and they help me grow so much. And that's a worthwhile investment of my time.
Thank you for investing your time in that, because that is such an amazing thing to work for. Because I know when I started it, I knew the kind of blocks I had in my head. I was like, are people even going to show up in my talk? Am I doing something legit? Is this how conference speakers present? So it was always nice to have that mentor to kind of take a look at it before we actually went on stage. So I think this is an amazing thing you're doing, and shout out to the entire Tech Voices community. I think even Abby is a part of Tech Voice, right? So I don't know who else, Maaret is. I want to give them all a shout out.
So, Ash Coleman is the third one in the leadership team, but there's so many mentors over the years that have helped us. I think there's like 40 people, so I can't give a shout out to all of them.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
I can definitely give a shout out to the idea that, we always welcome people who have already had experience of speaking to help more new people, because this is a huge community and there's a lot of work to do.
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. And for the people watching this, if you want to know more about Tech Voices, you can go and check out the website and Twitter. And are there any other resources, Maaret, where they can learn more about Tech Voices?
Now, basically, techvoices.org is our site.
Okay.
So that's where you can find it. And Tech Voices Tech_Voices is our Twitter handle. So those two are the best starting points for us.
Great. And I'll also add all of this in the description box below, so you can go and check it out. Moving on to the next topic, Maaret, you are also an author. I would love to know all about your journey as an author and how it's been so far, and some advice to people who'd like to start their journey, who are even thinking of, being an author in the near future. So some tips on that from your end.
I'm like thinking back to how did I start with that. I remember back in the days when I was a researcher at the university and I needed to write papers about testing, that I was really struggling. Every single thing that I wrote, I felt like Kem Kainer had already written that. And I usually found Kem Kainer's paper as soon as I had completed my own. And I felt it was always better than whatever I could have produced by that time. So I held on to a lot of things that I had written for a very, very long time. I didn't publish them. I felt they were somehow mediocre and less than. And at some point then, when blogging became a thing, I just decided I no longer care if things have been said or not. I actually don't even care anymore or back then I didn't care if, well, I still don't, but I don't care if people read what I write. I write for myself. And that was kind of the core insight that I needed to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Writing for myself is much more powerful than thinking about the others who I might be serving. And writing is one of the great ways of structuring your learning and making it externalized so that you see whether it's ridiculous to you, valuable to you, or something that you can improve on. And thinking of kind of like the old texts that I've written, I find that some of my best texts are ones that made me realize that I have taken complete 180 turns in my perspectives. It's actually great to realize that I have learned and be able to reflect on the changes that have happened to me internally, in the sense that reading my old text, it's okay that it's almost as if it was text by someone else.
That's beautiful. So, there are so many people who are in double minds. They're like, should I write or should I not write? Especially when it comes to blogging, they have this block. What would you say to someone who is on the fence to encourage them to start blogging?
So we have a very limited amount of time and energy in our lives. And we can use it either on thinking about doing things or doing things. So I suggest making the right choice with that time and just doing it. And with the little flows, the little doing of things, that becomes a great flow into relevant material. There's so many different audiences out there that you don't have to try to choose your audience will find you.
That's beautiful. Just do it. Just go ahead and do it. Don't waste your energy on thinking if you should do it or not. Just do it. That's
I used to
beautiful,
be one
Maaret.
of those I used to be one of those people who would create long lists of ideas that I want to write on. And then I realized I had hundreds of items on those lists and none of those articles written. And again, kind of like with the agile principles, I made this choice of commitment to myself that instead of writing a list, every time I feel like I should write something down on that list, I'll take that moment to write the article. The article doesn't have to be long. It can be just tiny thing where I can say the thing that I want, but I should write it down immediately. So that's how I blog. That's how my blog posts come about. That's how my tweets come about. So I have a very active Twitter feed in the sense of it reveals not all of my thoughts, but a lot of my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's also the idea behind having, sometimes I end up having more in my drafts than I actually have published because I'm like writing something, I'm like, oh, should I release it now or not? So I heard this thing of, if you have an idea, just spend like 20 minutes on that idea, just write it and just publish it. Don't have it sitting in your draft, and just publish it. Maybe no one's even going to look at it. Why are you spending so much energy thinking about what are people going to think about it? So yeah, that's awesome.
But sometimes then you end up having thousands of people read that piece of yours, and you might think it's something simple, but they do appreciate it. And even if it was something that they didn't appreciate, I think I can now speak from experience. The consequences are not as dire as we might be worried about.
That brings me to another question. So how do we handle consequences that may not have been as expected? When it comes, like when we're putting ourselves out there in social media and sharing our ideas, there are always going to be people who have opinions. There are so many people with opinions. So what's the best way to deal with that kind of opinion?
For a very long time, I went into conversations with people whenever they had a comment. But nowadays, to save and preserve my energy, unless it is a topic that I really want to have a conversation on, I use the mute button quite heavily. So it's up to me to decide, like, if I think of it this way, my social media is like my backyard. If I go on my backyard and I speak about things, the bypassers can hear, but it doesn't mean it's an open invitation for them to come and shout to me at my backyard. Actually, my backyard is, even though it's a public space, it's protected a little bit by rules on how to do things. So I can then choose that, this is the type of interaction that I welcome at my backyard, or I can choose that, you can, keep shouting there on the street, but I'm not going to be here to listen for that. So kind of finding the ways of controlling my energies and my interests, and not going into these random loopy arguments that sometimes the social media has. It has really made the experience better for me. And I accept that many of the things I say might have disagreement, but what I seek the foundation for what I say, kind of what's the foundation that I stand on, or where I go back to and reflect. It's this idea of, what do I want to be as a person? Not everyone needs to agree with me or think exactly like me, but I can still expect them to follow the general rules of not showing up every single day on my backyard shouting at me just because they don't like me.
Being respectful and giving that space. Yep. I like the idea of the mute button a lot. Thank you so much, Maaret. This has been amazing, and I'm sure people have gained so much out of learning about your experience. I have one final question for you. What would you say is the recipe of your success? What is one parting thought that you'd like to leave people with before we end this episode today?
I think the recipe for anyone's success is around learning. If you think of yourself and your value today as like you're 1.00, you are a good and a whole contributor and a person. And you're not learning, you're still going to be the same kind of a person tomorrow and the day after and in a year. Versus if you compare to yourself to the idea that what if you got 1% better? That tomorrow you were 1.01 of today's you. And in a year, that would mean that you're 37.8 of the previous year's you. I think that attitude to learning is what contributes to anyone's success. And we don't need to learn about the same things. All of us have our own path on what we learn. But we all need to learn and figure out what is it that is important to us.
That was beautiful. It's like compounding. The knowledge that you gain keeps compounding exponentially, and it's always going to stay with us. Thank you so much, Maaret. It was wonderful talking to you in this episode. And for people watching this, if you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. I stop recording.